and live for it. Some shy away from it. Others make adjustments and deal with it, and some, like Mike Tyson, refuse to adapt. Welcome to Outside the Lines. Tyson, the lost champion. I'm Charlie Steiner. Joining me for the next hour, ESPN boxing analyst Al Bernstein. Al, now that we've had some time to digest the enormity of this story, what's your overview?
Well, enormity is the right word, Charlie. This story is more enormous, I think, than most of us even thought it would be as I traveled around the country. It's astonishing to me how many people, boxing fans, sport fans, and just the general public, are so interested in this story. And it affects each of them, it seems, in a very intense and personal way. It forces you to think about personal things in relationship to Mike Tyson. I know my mind keeps going back to 5 years ago, a special I did here on ESPN about Mike Tyson when he was just on the verge of winning the heavyweight title. And I remember as I was writing that show and getting ready to host it, everything that we were doing in that show was positive. It was all looking ahead, blue skies, looking ahead to what looked like a limitless and terrific future for this young man.
How then the climate for Mike Tyson changed from blue skies to storm clouds, the subject of our next hour. Mike Tyson was a man of the streets and proud of it. So often in our conversations over the years, he would tell me with equal amounts of embarrassment and pride about his formative years on the streets of Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn.
Our whole motto wasn't about how tough you were, how good you could fight. It was how much money you had in your pocket. That was our whole issue, you know. I mean, we wanted to look nice, dress nice. I mean, we were looking nice. We didn't want to fight anyway, but we had to fight because guys would get mad because we looked nice and try to take our stuff. But we didn't want to fight. We just wanted to look nice and be decent people.
Windows aren't always a necessity in Tyson's old neighborhood. Sometimes they're a luxury. And in the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, the field of dreams are often littered with glass. Mike Tyson was always big for his age, still is. He was 200 pounds by the time he became a teenager, and always inside that large body came a small, high-pitched voice with that unmistakable lisp.
He was not an aggressive kid, but he was a defensive kid because lots of times, because of the way he dressed, because of the way he spoke, children would laugh. He would raise his hand sometime. The first time, I think, when he answered, the children laughed.
After dozens of run-ins with the law, petty crime, muggings, purse snatchings, and the like, Tyson ended up at this reform school, 200 miles north of Brooklyn. 2 days after his arrival, he met a counselor named Bobby Stewart.
I banged on the window, and she turned the light on. I said, "You got a problem?" He said, "Mr. Stewart, I just want to talk to you." I said, "Well, talk." This is when the doors were still closed and locked. He said, "I want to become a fighter." I said, "So do the rest of these guys." So the rest of these guys, they all talk. It's a lot of talk and stuff like that. He said, "I know, I'm serious." I said, "Well, I'm serious too. Let's see your behavior change the next couple weeks." He says, "If it continues like it is, maybe I'll talk to you."
Well, Stewart talked and taught, and Tyson listened and learned. Stewart was a friend of trainer Cus D'Amato, who invited the old man to see the young kid sparring.
And his nose bled, but it wasn't that bad, but it went over most of his face. And Teddy Atlas was there at the time, and he said, "Oh, okay, after the second round, Bob, we better stop. That's enough."
He insisted he wanted to go on, but he did it partly, I felt, and I think Cus felt, to show us that he was tough.
Immediately following, took my gloves off, and I walked over to Cus. I said, "What do you think?"
And he said, "You want to box?" He said, "If you listen to me, you could be the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of boxing."
And he jumped up and he gave me a hug, and he said, "Mr. Stewart, that's beautiful." And we were laughing, you know, punched each other all the way back in the car. That was nice.
Tyson was allowed to leave the Tryon School, and he moved in with D'Amato and his longtime housemate, Camille Ewald.
That kid, he was so grateful for everything. He never knew that so much he could eat.
I never tasted food that good before in my life.
And if he remains dedicated, interested, and without any distractions, I believe that eventually he will go down in history as the greatest heavyweight champion we've ever had.
He's only looking for one shot on you. Your defense right, you gotta be even more aware now, you understand? You can't get lazy, you can't get careless.
That was another D'Amato protege, Kevin Rooney, who for a time would become Tyson's trainer. Bankrolling Tyson's rise from obscurity were fight managers Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton. Tyson would become the youngest heavyweight champion in history at the age of 20. But Cus D'Amato never saw his final dream come true. D'Amato had died a year earlier.
Cus, trying to get Mike back to a human level from what Mike existed on in the streets, did a great job. And Jim and Bill and Kevin and Camille continuing that job. He was on his way to becoming what we would all deem as being very close to the mainstream of the population.
I remember one time in the gym when Cus asked him one time he was coming home, he said, "When I feel like it." And Cus never let anyone talk like that before. And I went after him and I said, well, "What the hell are you talking to him like that for?" I don't think he got the full course. In other words, he got all the direction he needed in the ring, but he wasn't quite directed in containing himself and into thinking things through with dealing with people outside the ring.
God took him about 1 year too early. Just for another year, Mike would have never been in that trouble because he would be able to teach him more about people. Cus taught him about fights, but not too much about people, because he didn't have time.
Cus D'Amato died on November 4th, 1985. 9 days later, Tyson would knock out a journeyman by the name of Eddie Richardson in just 77 seconds of the first round. A year later, Tyson would become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. But the death of Cus D'Amato had a devastating effect on the teenage Tyson. Not only had he lost his father figure, he also lost perhaps the only man who could instill any kind of discipline in Tyson's young life. A year ago, when Tyson and I sat down in his condominium in Las Vegas, I asked him if he ever reflected on where he's been and where he might be heading.
No, I don't do that ever. You know, because then it gives me a chance to think. And you can never think, because once you think, you lose time and everything in life. Once you take time and you acknowledge everything that's going on, it's time, you're losing time when something could be happening.
What's happening to Mike Tyson may be the byproduct of recent times. In 1988, undisputed heavyweight champion, controlling the ring, but the real fight in Tyson's life, it was outside the ropes. The fight to control Tyson. Chronologically, February, he marries Robin Gibbons. In March, the death of co-manager Jimmy Jacobs leaves Bill Caton as lone Tyson manager. Tyson would use legal action in an attempt to break their contract. And in August, another break, a bone in Tyson's hand, after a street fight with boxer Mitch Green.
And at that moment, he hit me. Like a sissy, a homo, he ran.
2 weeks later, Tyson's BMW collides with a tree. Mike is knocked unconscious. The New York Daily News calls it a suicide attempt.
Are you okay, Mike? Can you tell us what happened? No, just get out of here. Come on, please.
Can you,
Wait. Robin, can you tell us? No, nothing happened. Robin, I don't believe this.
Sir.
Give us a break, Mike. God.
After shielding her husband, 3 weeks later, Gibbons tells Barbara Walters and the World that she fears her husband.
It's been torture. It's been pure hell. It's been worse than anything I could possibly imagine. We got married to be together forever, not to plan for divorce.
7 days later, Gibbons files for divorce, calling her husband a manic depressive. While Gibbons exits the picture, Donald Trump and Don King enter. After 3 months as a Tyson advisor, the Donald billed the champ for $2 million.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Seeing dollar signs and success, promoter King swoops in, becomes a Tyson confidant, and helps push out Tyson's only pro trainer, Kevin Rooney.
I'm going to be with him for all of his life. Oh, boy. I love Tyson.
I expected Tyson to be broke and for his career to be ruined. You know, I figured he'd do it in the ring.
But it's been Tyson's penchant to make headlines outside the ring, showing up in many sensational headlines in newspapers and appearing in plenty of court papers. But all that, it seems secondary after the rape conviction that came down in this courtroom. Mike Tyson, a man influenced by those around him, faces his next fight alone.
Al Bernstein, of course, covered some of Mike Tyson's earliest professional fights. If you look at these pieces, what do you think about them?
First of all, it's fascinating to look at how much has transpired in the last 5 years. It's astonishing. But as you look at, when I think of those early fights, and I think now of some of the things even Teddy Atlas said, the early interactions with Cus at that point and how he was already straying a little bit, You get the impression at that point that he was a man who was headed towards some turbulent times, though at the time they kept him fighting, Charlie, literally almost every 2 or 3 weeks, and the reason for that was to suppress some of these things and keep a lid on this volcano.
And still ahead on this special edition of Outside the Lines, Mike Tyson's relationship with his controversial promoter, Don King. But joining us here in the studio next, former light heavyweight champion Jose Torres, now an author, and like Tyson, a disciple of Cus D'Amato, and New York Times columnist William C. Roden. And later, we'll chronicle the all-too-brief ring career of mighty Mike Tyson.
Get ready.
Welcome back to Tyson, the Lost Champion. I'm Charlie Steiner, joined now by Jose Torres, former light heavyweight champion of the world, former New York State boxing commissioner and author, and has known Mike Tyson nearly all of his adult life. And William C. Roden, columnist for the New York Times. Jose, let's begin with you. You and Floyd Patterson, two of Cus D'Amato's most notable disciples, who have clearly made it. Mike Tyson did not. Did, as some suggest, Cus simply run out of time on his project with Mike Tyson?
Well, I think that Cus died prematurely before he finished Tyson. I didn't think that Cus finished Tyson the fighter or Tyson the human being. I think that that has a lot to do with Tyson dealing with right and wrong outside the ring.
Well, what's your take on that?
Well, you know, I and looking at the people talk about Tyson, the thing that struck me, the first thing that struck me was that there were no black males at all in his evolution, his development. No black men at all. And I think that one of the dangers of looking at this whole Tyson case is that we look at Tyson, but there's a larger metaphor here, and the metaphor is that given the sort of historic tension between white males and black males in this country, white males can't teach black men how to be men. And as it turns out, black women can't either. The only people who are going to be able to teach black boys how to be men are black males. And I think that's sort of one of the larger crises of this thing. And to talk about how his downfall happened when he went to King, I mean, oddly, King was really the first strong, some might argue positive, black male in his life. So I think that's when we look at this situation, I think we have to expand beyond the right and wrong, but sort of the people in his life, but who's going to teach black men, black kids to be men? It's going to be black men.
But I think that the metaphor has its faults when you, based on the specific question that you asked, how come Floyd Patterson made it, and he had Cus D'Amato as the only male force behind his development, and Floyd made it, and myself. You know, and it was the exact same kind of people that were teaching us how to become human beings, how to become champions.
One of the great topics of discussion about Mike Tyson over the past couple of years is how smart is he? People say he's street smart, world stupid. What's your take on that, Bill?
You know, just from, again, and Jose may know him better than I do, but he seems to be a quick person. And you heard him talk about his life. And if he just had the time to sort of take internal stock of himself, which I don't think he's ever had, I think that he's got and that's the sad thing about this, I think he's got a great capacity, a real great capacity to be a sort of deep thinking human being. Hasn't had that time.
You cannot be champion of the world and be a dummy. Tyson is a very smart guy, intellectually, and he just did not grow up emotionally.
Being a Tyson biographer and knowing him really most of his adult life, what is your sense, Jose? Do you think in Mike Tyson's own mind, he did something wrong in room 606 of the Canterbury Hotel?
No. I think that Tyson had done this thing before. I think that that was his attitude. I think that he's been tormented by the whole background of his childhood, and that's his style. And I didn't think that he was doing, that he thought he was not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, and I think you get a lot of that too. I think that in the court of the street, he's basically innocent. I mean, in a lot of private conversation with men, you know, if they would dare to admit it, people still wonder, well, what did he do wrong? She was there at 2 o'clock, or, you know, that kind of mentality. I don't think that he may yet grasp the larger significance of whether he was innocent or not. There was a larger injustice done.
Jose, knowing Tyson as well as you do, and now he is facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, how will he be able to handle that, or will he?
There could be very serious trouble because Tyson has tasted the good life, and a few years ago, 3 years back, when he had an accident with the car, some people thought that he was trying to commit suicide. At that time, I was skeptical of that theory. Today, looking back and looking at his situation, Tyson is liable to commit suicide.
Thank you, Jose Torres and Bill Roden. Still ahead on Tyson, the Lost Champion, the often stormy relationship between Mike Tyson and his flamboyant promoter, Don King. And joining us next, the publisher of Boxing Illustrated, Bert Sugar. Bert's going to join Al Bernstein and me to reflect on Tyson's place in boxing history.
Tyson, no doubt, one of the best athletes who ever went into the ring. A great puncher, great upper body movement, and a class act to watch when he was in shape.
Just ferocious.
I think the insecurity that he felt, he had to prove to the world that I am just as good as everybody else, and he would go to the end of the herd to prove it to people.
If you compare the different styles, his style was different from any fighter that came about, even Joe Frazier. He had a little bit of everybody, a little bit of Marciano. He had an awkward style, and he had brute strength that he possessed the power that a lot of fighters didn't have. And he was danger each and every second that he was in the ring.
On his way toward winning the heavyweight championship, Mike Tyson made quick work of his opponents. More than half of his first 28 opponents weren't around to answer the bell for the second round. As his opponents got tougher, his fights lasted longer, but only James Buster Douglas ever got the best of Mike Tyson in the ring. The heavyweight division is the engine that drives the boxing locomotive. And from November the 22nd, 1986 until February 10th, 1992, Mike Tyson was the engineer, the dominant force, the most powerful puncher, and the biggest box office attraction in the heavyweight division. Therefore, in the entire sport.
That crowd, that's a right. Oh, a big right hand. Quickness in there, and where he hits you. Oh, big left hand. Thomas really nailed. Big left hook, big right hand. Down it goes, big left Thomas. I don't know if
it wasn't that long ago that Mike Tyson was simply unbeatable. Tyson was the king of the ring. No more had to be said.
How dare them even to challenge me, these fighters, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? With their primitive boxing skills, you know what I mean? They're as good as dead.
Tyson's power was legend. In fact, just days before his 16th birthday, Cus D'Amato entered his protege in his first amateur tournament. With just 6 months of experience, this man-child won every bout. Local, regional, national, every fight, a one-round knockout. And 2 years later, at the Olympic trials, Tyson was the center of attention.
You watch Tyson fight, and there's an air of expectancy. When will he connect? And then what happens if he does?
But Tyson's punching style didn't work at the amateur level. He would lose twice in the Olympic trials to a slick boxer named Henry Tillman. The outcome would be devastating to Tyson. He would turn pro immediately after the Olympic trials and not lose another fight for almost 6 years. In his first year in fighting for money, he was in the ring every 2 weeks, and 12 of his first 16 bouts ended in one-round knockouts.
doesn't get hit. When Mike Tyson was 13, 14, and 15 years of age, Mr. D'Amato taught Mike how not to get hit.
At the age of 19, he already had 19 fights, 19 knockouts, and an undeniable aura.
He wears no robe. He wears no socks with his boxing shoes. He says that makes him feel more like a warrior.
If there was any question about Tyson's ferocity and legitimacy, Marvis Frazier found out the answer the hard way.
Tyson comes out slugging.
He comes out smoking like Marvis's father, Joe. Marvis must move or we're going to be out of here very, very quickly. Uppercut, and Marvis is hurt.
Frazier is down. Joe Cortez moves in to have a look, and he's going to stop the fight. It did not last 20 seconds.
Of the three champions, who would you like to fight and why?
I'd fight anybody my trainer put me in with because I'm confident I could beat any fighter in the world.
He was certainly ready for Trevor Berbick.
That was a right to the body and an uppercut to the head, and Berbick is down. This one is going to be over, I believe. It's over. That's all, and we have a new era in boxing.
By August of 1987, Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, seemingly invincible.
Here comes Mike Spinks in. He leads to the right hand. There he goes. I don't think you'll get up from this.
The 91-second devastation of Michael Spinks was the crowning moment of Tyson's boxing career. He and his trainer Kevin Rooney, who lived under Customato's roof as teenagers, shared the moment. But 6 months later, Tyson fired Rooney. Coincidence or not, Tyson's skills from that point on seemed in decline. A year later, with Kevin Rooney out of the picture, Mike Tyson was knocked out by a journeyman named Buster.
Finish things in.
Oh, the uppercut.
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
He doesn't get hit, doesn't get hit, doesn't get hit.
Last year, of course, Mike Tyson defeated Donovan Razor Ruddock twice, the last time in June of 1991, a 12-round decision. Al Bernstein rejoins us. This, of course, is Bert Sugar, the editor and publisher of Boxing Illustrated. Bert, you are one of those who is of the belief that Mike Tyson's skills have been in decline.
Yes, what you have seen, basically, Charlie, is a meteor, and we're watching the tail end of it. Here is a man who won the heavyweight championship, and he's much heralded as such, at the youngest age ever, 20. He's also, don't tell anybody, the youngest man ever to lose the heavyweight championship at the age of 23. He fought with a precocity, he fought with an energy, he fought with a dynamism. But it was one of those things like he was hurrying to catch a train. And he did, as we saw in several of those fights, catch it early. But that is the kind of, I think, effect his entire career had, that meteoric up and down, and I look for it in decline now.
From an X's and O's point of view, Al, do you buy that? Or his skills on the decline?
Well, I think what Bert said is basically true, and that's a more esoteric viewpoint than I might take of it, but the fact of the matter is there are specific reasons in my mind why it happened. Some would point to the fact that he left Kevin Rooney, which was alluded to in that piece. And certainly leaving Kevin Rooney and leaving that influence hurt Tyson, but in this sense. It's not that Kevin Rooney, who's a good trainer, is the only good trainer in boxing. And it's not that Mike Tyson himself, who's a very intelligent boxer and who is a ring historian, doesn't know all the things that Customato and Kevin Rooney instilled in him. Those are in his brain. I believe it's partially Mike Tyson, who even in the later days of Rooney was not doing the things that got him to the championship. And so it's him, I think, even now, with whatever void he may have in training, and I think he does have one, he is the one that can't bring himself to get the discipline to do all the things that made him heavyweight champion, things like moving his head, punching to the body, all that stuff. He's got to do it. That's why he was heavyweight champion.
If you look at things, and as you say, getting less esoteric, but if you look at him, BC before the championship, what made him great, and AD after Douglas, Yes, he didn't move his head. Yes, he didn't throw combinations. Yes, he didn't jab his way in. All these were shortcomings that you could see happening. And as Jimmy Jacobs said, doesn't get hit. He stands there like a stone planning a one-punch attack. He always had the brute force, but he had speed and he had movement. He doesn't have speed and movement anymore, just brute force.
Al, how's history going to treat Mike Tyson as a fighter?
That is an interesting question. And of course, it's one that is incomplete now, but may become complete later on. And now, of course, whatever amount of time he spends in prison, we have to judge it at this moment. I think that Mike Tyson certainly is one of the better heavyweight champions of all time, but the problem is, how do you judge him when he hasn't had his super fight? How do you judge him when he's come at a time when some of the other heavyweights out there seem to be suspect? And, of course, we may yet have a chance to judge him later, Charlie, because if he comes back and fights again, we may judge that Mike Tyson.
And he has not yet reached his physical peak. So where does he place in the history books?
Well, when I did my book, Boxing's 100 Greatest, I rated him the 10th greatest heavyweight champion of all time. I'm a little lower on him than Al, but for a reason. Al points it out. Greatness needs to rub against other greatness. Ali needed to rub against Frazier, etc., etc. He, with the rare exception of Michael Spinks, has not rubbed up against other greatness, and that was greatness not in the heavyweight division. I still put him 10th of all time in the heavyweight division.
Bert and Al will be joining us in just a bit, but when this Outside the Lines special returns, we'll hear from Mike Tyson, in his own words, from a series of interviews we've done over the past few years, his thoughts about himself. But up next, we'll explore the relationship between Tyson and Don King.
I love you, Mike. You love me, Mike?
I love you.
All right.
We interrupt this recession for an important announcement.
De facto manager. Their relationship, as you know, has often been a rocky one. Critics say that King's primary interest in Tyson was money, and plenty of it. But in spite of their differences, Mike Tyson has remained loyal to the king of boxing promoters.
I know I'm the best fighter in the world, and I proved it time and time again.
My thing is promoting for the people. It ain't about what I get for my own selfish and self-aggrandizement.
The ironic thing about this whole situation, the sense of humor in a disaster. Here's a guy, I don't know his name, said, only in America. This is what happened to Tyson, only in America.
It wasn't until evil influences were brought around Mike to keep him from going in the right direction.
When he was with people who try to do good, he would try to do good.
There's no question that Don and what he has done has been an absolute disaster in every way.
That Don King is an egregious and evil man. None of that is true. Oh, man, hallelujah. Oh, free at last, thank God Almighty, he's free at last.
You could set somebody up real easy and say, it's all Don King's fault.
He got with King. I blame King. I go after King any chance I get.
I think Mike did what Mike wanted to do.
This permissiveness is something that was just ingrained in the behavior of Mike Tyson and Don King.
If there was any loss of control, it was early. Cuz was losing control when he was 16, when he told Cuz, I'll come home when I feel like it.
He's never told Mike what is right and what is wrong. If Mike wants to do it, sure, Mike.
Jimmy and company had to cover up a lot of Mike's actions when Mike was still perceived as a pretty good guy. King and everyone inherited it.
Nobody wants to write about Bill Caton robbing Mike Tyson.
He controls Mike better if Mike has these weaknesses that he exploits.
And then they say, why did Mike Tyson leave? He's supposed to stay there and get his head beat in and then keep on getting his head beat in without going out and trying to do something for himself.
So King came to my office and he said, and this is a direct quote, "Sure, I poisoned Mike's mind against you. Did a good job. You give me my 4-year contract and I'll unpoison him." That's Don King.
Mike Tyson speaks for himself. Mike Tyson speaks for himself. Speaks for himself.
I dare you talk to me like that. You should get up and kneel to me now, and I'll spare you the night of the 28th. Oh, man, I can't wait till the 28th. I'm gonna make you my girlfriend.
There's something you can't buy in that class, and you don't got none of that
You're sweet. I'm gonna make sure you kiss me good with those big lips.
I had forgotten, when Mike broke up with Robin, how terribly painful it is for a young man to lose a woman that he thought he was in love with.
Everyone ran for me. And I called Dawn.
Don quickly brought him out to Cleveland.
I was in a bad situation in which he helped out, and I felt indebted to him.
Slowly, carefully, began to suggest that he and Mike would become a great team.
It ain't about Don King. It's about blackness, man. I don't want nobody to mischaracterize me. I'm the nigger. I'm the wild-eyed nigger that did it, but not with hostility, with love. It's unfortunate that y'all don't seem to believe what I say when I say it. You know what I mean? I love you, Mike. You love me, Mike?
Love you.
All right.
ESPN attempted to contact both Don King and Mike Tyson for a response, but they both declined to comment for this show. Bert, is your sense that Don King plays the heavy in the Tyson melodrama or not?
Well, while I'm not going to vote for Don King, for Prom King, I'm going to tell you that Don King has been blamed for everything, including the dissolution of the Russian Empire. In this, he is not to blame wholly, because the breadcrumbs, psychological breadcrumbs back to Mike Tyson's youthful transgressions as a 12-year-old would indicate that Don King had only a last-minute hand at it. In fact, I give you the following line from Larry Holmes 5 years ago, who said, in 5 years, Mike Tyson will either be dead or in prison. And when he said that, there was no Don King in Mike Tyson's life.
Al, what's your take
Yeah,
on that?
Yeah, you know what it is, Charlie? I think also part of the problem is Don King suffers from the nature of his relationship. He is a promoter trying to act as a personal manager for Mike Tyson. The two don't always go together and really shouldn't. And whatever a person wants to say, if they have maybe not a positive spin on Caton and Jacobs and what they did for Tyson, I don't know how they couldn't. They did do a good job. The one point is they were personal managers. Their mission was only to be concerned about that fighter. Don King has other interests involved, and so by the very nature of his role, he's not always going to look out for the best interests of Mike Tyson.
Thank you, gentlemen. Still ahead. On Tyson, the Lost Champion, we'll visit a gym to find out how young kids have reacted to the Tyson conviction. But up next, Mike Tyson talks about Mike Tyson.
The money that I make, they talk about the big allowance, I bled for that money and everything I got, and I don't part with it easy. And I'm enjoying myself as a 19-year-old boy.
Mike Tyson, for better or worse, has been one of the most interesting personalities in sports since he burst onto the scene 7 years ago. He, in his own way, has been one of the most difficult yet fascinating subjects to interview. Sometimes funny, sometimes angry, sometimes shallow, sometimes incredibly deep. Here now a compilation of some of those interviews that we and others have done over the years.
Being brought up in Brownsville at a young age, as you know, I've been corrupted with the bad crowd, and I met people, and I was in an environment where all the wrong things you did were the right thing. That's what's good. I used to always get in a lot of trouble. You know, I used to be a nuisance. I used to always be corrupt, a little bad kid, mostly chaos and everything. I was just bad, I guess, and a friend of Cuss knew me, and I was in trouble in a bad boys' home, and he was a good friend of Cuss, and he used to fight under Cuss, and he brought me up here. And that's how I met Cuss. My celebrity status, I don't wear jewelry. I don't consider myself a superstar. And like the money that I make, that you talk about the big allowance, I bled for that money and everything I got, and I don't part with it easy. And I'm enjoying myself as a 19-year-old boy. Everybody's going around saying, he's just a boy, he's just a boy. But I'm going to be the only boy to be king of the world.
What about girls? Tough to go out with girls?
No. Even if I wasn't champion, it wouldn't be tough for girls.
You always been lucky with the ladies?
Always.
Yeah, oh, that's good. So what's tough? Because they won't leave you alone now, or what?
Yeah, isn't that, will you believe that?
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that what you work for in a way?
I only work to get rich. You know, I'm happy that I'm getting paid, but even if I wasn't getting paid the great deal of money that I'm getting paid, I would still be happy just to be the best. You're gonna marry somebody, you trust them, and that's what marriage is all about, is being together for the rest of your life. For this stage of my life, I do have many millions. My wife would just have to ask for it, and she has every penny I have. If she wants it right now, take me, she could leave right now. Take everything I have and just leave. She has the right to do that. She has the power to do that. She's still here. She tolerates Mike. And I love my wife.
Getting the shot that will finish things in. What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
It's my first time in life losing, besides fighting, you know what I mean? I've lost in life, things in life, people dying in your life, adversities in life, and I've always been able to come back. You know what I mean? It's part of your character, and what are you made out of? Well, I believe a lot of people want to see, they want to see me self-destruct. They want to see me one day with handcuffs and walking in a police car, going to jail, like you seen Marlon Brando's son. People, they love seeing the scene. Look, this is what I told you. I told you he's headed for that. I told you he's headed for that. You know what I mean? But the objective, my objective of life and my sole success is that I'm successful, that I'm not in jail and I'm not in Brownsville anymore, and I beat all the odds.
Al, it's almost eerie to hear some of these comments.
It really is, and you know what's revealed in all those interviews? The fact that we can never get a fix on Mike Tyson, because in public he showed us all the different facets of his personality. If you saw all those clips of a Marvin Hagler, Ray Leonard, or Muhammad Ali, it wouldn't be as diverse as Mike Tyson. We can't get a fix on this young man.
Up next, we go to a local inner-city gym to find out what young fighters think about the Tyson story and its aftermath.
He ain't had nobody to tell him what to do when he was young. He ain't had no mother, no father, you know. He's still my idol. He's still my idol.
He should just chill out.
If everything did happen the way I read in the paper, I think that, you know, he's a disgusting person. I just don't think that that's the way it happened.
"7 years since Mike Tyson fought his first professional fight against someone named Mercedes. Tyson, the first undisputed heavyweight champion since Muhammad Ali, at last count owns 9 luxury cars, including a Rolls-Royce and a Ferrari. You know, for many fighters and inner-city youth, Mike Tyson was always their hero, and in many cases still is. The verdict in Indianapolis has changed the opinions of some, but not all, as Robin Roberts found out in a visit to an inner-city boxing gym in Hartford, Connecticut.
Just like millions of youngsters in the inner cities of this country, they, like Mike Tyson, will be the products of their environments. But what of these young and impressionable people in our decaying and overcrowded cities? The ones who look to Mike Tyson as a role model. What do they think now? Have they been betrayed and don't consider the former heavyweight champion their hero anymore? To them, is he just another guy from the neighborhood who had made it out just to end up in jail? Or is he still the main man? We asked, and they answered.
What do you think about when you think of Mike Tyson?
He should not did that because it was too bad. The girl should not go up to his room when he asked him. He should stay in the ring and fight for the belt and all that stuff.
Do you learn anything from it? Let me be honest. Was he somebody that was someone you idolized or a hero, or you said, I want to be like Mike?
Yeah.
I still like him, though. He'll be my brother. You know, he cool. I like him, though. But I know where he coming from, because the way he grew up and the way we growing up, it's similar. It's the same thing, but only thing, he just grew up in the streets of New York and we growing up on the streets of Hartford. It's nothing different about it. But only thing, he made it, and then when he made it, he didn't know when to stop, you know, acting like he was in the streets. He's supposed to, you know, start acting different, but he didn't. You know, I guess he just kept going by the way he wanted to go, you know. He wanted to do the stuff the way he wanted to do.
I really admire the guy. I mean, I never got to know him personally, but, you know, I admire the guy for who he is and what he accomplished in life. Not too many people can do that.
Guilty on all 3 counts, maximum sentence, 60 years.
Did you hear about how his reputation, he was like rude to people, or he treated women poorly? Did you ever hear that? Did that make you think like, come on, don't do that, Mike, just box?
Chill out.
Yeah. He should just chill out. Just go to his house, just do anything, but stay away from the girls.
Just for 1 minute, think that maybe, just maybe, he did that. You may never enter.
He got too much money to go buy him a lady, like 10 ladies, all that money he got. You know, he don't need to rape nobody.
Maybe he did. If in fact he did rape her, and as like the paper says, you know, he was as forceful and as mean, as aggressive as he was, I think he's a terrible man. I mean, you know, if everything did happen the way I read in the paper, I think that, you know, he's a disgusting person. I just don't think that that's the way it happened.
Do you have any heroes? Do you have any idols? Do you have any people that you like or want to be like? Who you like, Mike?
Mike Tyson.
Columnist Bill Rhoden of the New York Times rejoins us now. What was your take on that piece?
Charlie, I look at that and you know, I get angry and I get sad. You know, I'm angry because you know, the Prison Project just came out with its report, and it reported that the United States is the biggest jailer in the world of black males, bigger than South Africa. And it's sad to me to see that here comes another guy, another brother, in the judicial system. The reason I'm sad, though, is that these kids want so desperately to have a role model, somebody to hang their hats on, and it seems repeatedly and increasingly they just fall up short. They're repeatedly disappointed. That makes me very sad.
Al?
Yeah, you know, it's funny that I can relate to what Bill's saying, and then you take it on another plane. You know, I run around the country, and boxing fans want to come up to me and talk to me about this, and they have in the last month or two. And one of the things that's distressed me greatly is, almost to a man, and in many cases they're men, they've wanted me to tell them it's okay, even before the verdict. They wanted me to say, it's all right, Mike Tyson didn't do it, he's going to fight again, he and Holyfield will get in the ring. Their focus is so much on that, they completely have forgotten the fact that there was a victim here. They've forgotten the fact that a crime was committed, and of course he ultimately was convicted of it. This is distressing to me because, Bill, it's like we're worried about the wrong things in our society.
And the gender issue is so deep. Particularly, I think about again, the metaphor, the idea of a black male violating a black female, which sort of gets into a thing that's not talked about.
And that got lost in the whole translation.
That's the thing, I guess, that was most disturbing, especially in the early part of the trial. It seemed that there was a sense, at least that I was getting in Indianapolis, that there was this great sympathy for Mike Tyson, but there was never any degree of sympathy for the, as it turns out, the victim.
Yeah, I guess you get this ambivalence, the same ambivalence I referred to at the beginning of the program, in that you don't want to smash Tyson because you realize that that what we're talking about is something systemic, and that he is ultimately a victim, but yet at the same time, you've got to stress to kids that you have to be accountable for your own actions because the consequences are very swift and they're very severe.
What about the young guys who are on the Top Rank show that you deal with? How does this play into them?
Well, you know, I wonder if sometimes, you know, we get to I interview 6 to 8 boxers every week, and I say this all the time, and I go around the country and I tell people on radio shows and everywhere, these are men, when you talk to them, you'd be delighted to eat dinner with, have a drink with, be a part of your family. The majority and the vast majority of professional boxers are very good men. They work hard at their craft, they're family men. And when people say, does the situation with Mike Tyson reflect badly on them, they may think that, Charlie, and it's kind of sad because I'll tell you what, as a group, they're good men.
Thank you, Al, and thank you, Bill Rhoden. And Al and I are going to be back in just a minute for some final thoughts on this ESPN Outside the Lines special, Tyson, the Lost Champion. Tyson, he'll be sentenced on April 3rd in Judge Patricia Gifford's second-floor courtroom in the Marion County Courthouse in Indianapolis. The period on the beginning of the sentence. And the end of a once brilliant boxing career. Now, maybe the most disturbing thought we've had all night came from Jose Torres, who feared for Tyson's immediate future, fearing he might even be suicidal.
Well, I think the reason Jose might have alluded to that, in addition to the fact that he's known Mike Tyson so well over the years, is that he knows Mike is facing a litany of problems. Obviously, the most difficult, the sentencing coming up, and we don't know how long that'll be, and the length of that will determine to a great deal his emotional stability in the coming months as the appeals process goes on. But we could be seeing Mike Tyson, even if the sentence is not a huge sentence and he's out of jail in 5 or 6 years, we could be looking at a Mike Tyson at the age of 30 or 31 trying to get a boxing career back in gear and doing it perhaps for a very specific reason. His financial situation could be very unstable at that point. There is a civil suit potentially pending. He has a lot of lawyers' fees to pay. And we could see Mike Tyson, perhaps the most tragic possibility, trying at the age of 32 to rekindle a boxing career, maybe not successfully, just because he needs it to survive financially.
You know, it is impossible to predict if Tyson will return to the ring or not when he is ultimately released from prison. When Tyson finally begins his prison term, it will mark the first time he's going to be all by himself. No Cuss, no Camille, no Jimmy, no Robin, no Don King, no one but himself for the first time since the last time he was incarcerated at the age of 12. Personally, I hope that Mike Tyson can find it within himself to return to society as the funny, sensitive, charming, and disarming guy we saw all too infrequently. For Al Bernstein, I'm Charlie Steiner.